सो गुड इवनिंग एवरीबॉडी। आज हम लोग अपना लेक्चर सीरीज़ को कंटिन्यू करते हुए वील मूव फॉरवर्ड विद इन्फ्लेशन, द चैप्टर वी स्टडीड लास्ट टाइम. सो दिस टाइम आवर फोकस वुड बी ऑन what are, you know, causes of inflation, what is demandful inflation, what is cost push inflation, what are structural bottlenecks. Then we'll move on to what is expansionary monetary policy and contractionary monetary policy. After that, our main focus would also be on what are the steps taken by RBI, in the sense like what is monetary policy which is taken by the RBI to control inflation, and what is fiscal policy which is taken by the government of India to control again inflation, and as well lead to economic development of the country. So हम लोग इन दोनों चीज़ों के बारे में will focus on. But currently, before going ahead, we'll be starting with the causes of inflation. Last class we have already studied what is inflation, that is increase in price and change in and decrease in purchasing power, that is inflation. I gave you an example of Sham. Then in the last class we have also studied about what are the indices for measuring the inflation in India. Along with that, we have also studied what is headline inflation, which is which is related to your consumer price index, and what is core inflation, which is also related to your wholesale price index. Because in the core inflation from the headline inflation, while calculating the core inflation, what we have to do, we have to minus the food and fuel inflation from the headline inflation. So when we do this thing, we get the core inflation, as you can see here. So now we move ahead with our next concept, that is causes for inflation. So there are three causes for inflation, as you can see I have pointed out here. I'll just change the color of the marker. So the first thing, as you can see here, is I've written it down: demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, and structural bottlenecks. So these are the major causes of inflation, as you can see. So as you can see here, I've given 3 points here, sub points of this demand pull inflation. That is, one is rise in income and population, next is black money, and third is excessive government expenditure. So these three are the factors that leads to demand pull inflation. When I'm talking about the cost push inflation, it is the major causes of cost push inflation are your wage push, that is increasing minimum support price, next are your profit push, and third is your raw material push. Last but not the least, when we are talking about the cause of inflation, structural bottlenecks also plays a crucial role in increasing and decreasing the inflation. So I'll give you the example of each one of them as we go ahead, and we'll try to explain you what these terms mean. Once you understand what these things mean, you'll be able to answer most of the question from the inflation. So this is a very important section. I hope you listen to it carefully. So demand pull inflation की बात जब करते हैं, as you can see, rise in income and population, black money, and excessive government expenditure. So let us take this first factor, rise in income and population. So let's assume on 2001, in a village called Talu, the population of the village was say around 10,000 people, and say they needed 100 kg of rice every month. So these 10,000 people needed 100 kg of rice every month. Okay, but now what happened over the period of time when the population increased, as they calculated the population of the same village Talu, they saw that the population of Talu has now increased to 1 lakh. Now what do you think? The demand for rice, which was previously in the year 2001, which was previously 100 kilo of rice that was required by these 10,000 people, will it be same or will it increase? Definitely, as you can see, when there is an increase in population, along with that the demand for rice would also increase. So what we can say that previously, since 100 kg of rice was required by 10,000 people every month, when there are 1 lakh people in this same village, at least around 10,000 kg of rice per month is required. I hope this is clear. So what you can understand from this is, as the population went on increasing, so what happened was, the demand for goods and commodities also increased. We can also use the same example when we can say that previously, when there were in a village, the cars or the vehicles were not used. But over the period of time, when these villages turned into cities and then metropolitans and then big towns or big states, over the period of time, you can see there is a rise in demand for automobile as well as cars, like bikes, likewise. Similarly, when I'm talking to you about the first factor I gave you, rise in population, same, let's assume there is an increase in income of the people in that village. So previously these people were earning say 100 rupees per month. Now previously we were talking about rice, so let's convert it into rupees. So previously they were earning 100 rupees per month, 10,000 people. Now because there is a rise in population also, these people are also, the population of the income of the people have also increased. So let's assume the income of the population have increased to 10,000 rupees. Previously it was 100, now it's 10,000. Or let's do one thing to make things more clear. What we can do, we can keep the population as whatever it was in the year 2001. So let's assume in the 2001 the population of the village talu was 1000 rupees, and they were earning 100 rupees per month. But in 2020 this population of talu was also 10,000 rupees, but now they are earning higher sum of money, that is 10,000 rupees they are earning monthly. What you can say is that now, because people have more liquid money in their hands, they'll be able to buy more goods and commodities. What do you mean by that? When people are buying more goods and commodities, that means what we can say is that the demand is increasing. The demand is increasing, and as a result, when more and more people are demanding a particular good or commodity, over the period of time, what will happen? Over the period of time, what will happen is the price of the commodity would go up. Of the commodity would go up. Similarly, as the price of the commodity would go up, what will happen? The value of the money would decrease. That means the purchasing power of that money would decrease, as well as price of that particular commodity would also increase. As I told you, I'm repeating the same thing. So you can see when there's a rise in demand, prices are also going up, and as a result, purchasing power of the people are also falling. So what we can say is that in this type of situation, when there's a rise in population or rise in income, there's a situation of inflation in the economy. Inflation in the economy. I hope this is clear. So when there is inflation in the economy, what happens? What is the end product of this? Is that, or what is the byproduct of this inflation? Is that inflation leads to, first thing, this demand pull inflation due to rise in income or population. What it leads to is that from the producer's point of view, when more and more people are demanding a particular product, what will the producer do? He will try to maximize his profit. How? By increasing the price of that particular commodity. Let's say example again. I give an example of during the COVID-19, you saw there was a drastic increase in the price of the drug called remdesivir, or there is a drastic increase in the prices of hand sanitizers. Why? Because before COVID or pre-COVID, the sanitizer were being sold at a normal rate, say 50 rupees or 60 rupees. And normal number of people who were demanding before that, they were the same population who were demanding the sanitizers. But all of a sudden when the COVID came up, what happened? More and more people were aware about the fact that if they clean their hands, if they use the sanitizer, they'll be able to keep the virus away from themselves. And it was a kind of panic situation that rose up during that time. As a result, what happened? When more and more people thought that we need to buy the sanitizers, they went to the shop and they started buying more and more sanitizer. But you have to understand this point. From the supply side or from the producer side, the amount of sanitizer supplied during that time was same, which was being supplied previously. But this time what happened, the situation, how it changed was the demand for these sanitizers were more. And as the demand for the sanitizer were more, what happened was, now in order to meet the higher demand, what the producers did was they tried to maximize their profit. And how they maximize their profit? They maximize their profit by increasing the price. So as a result, what happened? And as well as second thing, while profit maximization to why, along with that, they also try to increase their supply side also. They would try to improve their supply setup or supply mechanism. How will they do that? So there are 4 factors of production, that is land, labor, capital and enterprise. And when all these 4 factors are employed, these are called factors of production. And the kind of payment they received that are called as factor payments, like land receives rent, labor receives wages, capital receives interest, and employment entrepreneur or enterprise receives profit. So these are the factor payments we talk about. So as a result, what happened due to demand pull inflation? Profit maximization happened, as well as higher investment happened in 4 factors of production to meet the rising demand. So as you can see, there was higher investment in 4 factors of production. It also led to increase in employment level, because now more and more laborers are employed in the factory to to produce more and more sanitizers. Pehle 10 people were employed, now say 20 people are employed. As a result, what happened? 10 more people are getting employment, so their capacity to they are getting a salary, and now because they are getting a salary, their capacity to go and purchase things also increase. So it's a cycle basically. So now what happened due to demand pull inflation? I've written it down here for you also. So first is profit maximization kar raha hai producer apna. Second, what he's trying to do is basically he has invested this extra income that he's generating he has invested this money into the 4 factors of production to meet the rising demand. And how he will do that? By increasing the supply chain mechanism. As a result, what happened was, as you can see, higher investment in 4 factors of production. Why? To meet the rising demand. And as a result, what happened? Rise in employment levels. So whenever there is demand pull inflation, it always is a positive aspect for the society, because it is it leads to increase in employment level. Always remember, when we are talking about the four factors of production, except one, which is labor, all the three other factors are fixed factors, which cannot be increased all of a sudden and which cannot be decreased all of a sudden. But when I'm talking about the variable factors in the four factors of production, the laborers are the easy targets. Laborers. Why? Because they are a variable factor. Why? Because in a factory or in an organization, these laborers can be chucked out very easily. And why they are chucked out? They are chucked out for multiple reasons, like to increase the profit of a company, or when they are unable to pay the salaries, that is cut down on cost, or maybe to buy better products, to buy better goods, or you can say invest in capital, factor, machineries and all. So because labor being a variable factor, it can be increased and decreased easily. So whenever we are talking about demand pull inflation, always keep that in mind, that due to demand pull inflation, it always leads to increase in employment level. Why? Because the aggregate demand is increasing as compared to aggregate supply. Now to meet this aggregate demand, the employment level along with all the other fixed factors, they also has to be increased. But when I'm talking about the cost push inflation, it's a reverse phenomena, where because of rise in average supply, there is a greater aggregate supply, the aggregate supply is higher as compared to aggregate demand, it leads to cost push inflation. Now how aggregate supply is higher as compared to aggregate demand? Now see, wage push. Now what happened? There are laborers in the factory, they are earning 100 rupees per month. Now and there are 10 laborers working in the factory. Now they go to their owner and tell him, I'm giving you an example here. Sir, kindly increase our salary because goods and commodities are becoming very expensive. The education for our children are becoming very expensive. We cannot afford it. So kindly increase our salary. Now the owner of the factory is very well versed, or knows very well that if he increases the salary of the employees, अगर ये salary को increase करता तो end result क्या होगा? He has to adjust this increased money in the price of the product. So suppose the product previously was being sold at 200 rupees. Now because there is a hike in the salary of the laborers, this fixed cost would be added into the final price of the product. So अब कितना हो गया price जो final product का था, say 250 rupees, because there is a demand for increase in the salary of the laborers. Now they are saying that, sir, previously you were paying 100, now kindly pay us 150. Now he knows very well that if he increases the price of the product, what will happen? The demand for the product will go down. Basic law of demand की बात करता है. Now in order to do away with this kind of situation, what he will do here is basically, along with, so he will not increase the price, but he will say, okay, there are two options. Either I'll increase your salary, or I'll stay the same. If you want to work, or I'll find another set of laborer. So either he can give them the option that if you want to continue to work here, work. Otherwise, you cannot. You can leave this job. We'll find somebody else. So एक तो ये option है. Second, what he can do is he will say, okay, I will increase your salary, but at the same time, previously 10 employees were working in the factory. Now I cannot afford to pay all the 10 employees the higher salary. So what I'll do, I'll keep only 6 employees. And 4 would be chucked out from these 10, and these 6 will get a higher salary of rupees 150 that was demanded. Either way, you have to adjust it. Now obviously वो या तो price of the product बढ़ाएगा final product price of the final product, या वो क्या करेगा, वो अपनी जो variable cost है उसको कम करने की कोशिश करेगा. Variable cost as in the labor cost. Why? Because when I'm talking about the fixed factors या fixed cost, you cannot decrease them so easily. Why? आप क्या land, आपने 10 गज की land ले रखी है एक business setup करने के लिए. Can after a month you can go and say that, okay, just do one thing to the owner, sir, आप 10 गज की जगह मेरे को 9.5 गज ही दे दीजिए. I don't want this extra land. You cannot do that. Once you have taken the land, it's yours, and you cannot piece out some chunks and say that, okay, I'll be paying only for the 9 hectares of land or 6 hectares of land. There is a certain amount of land. If you want to take it, or you can leave it. It's not that you'll get half of the land or 3/4 of the land. Likewise, similarly, you cannot increase or decrease the capital size also. That is your, what do you say, number of machineries. Okay, you can sell them, but at the same time, machinery is something which is helpful in the long run also. Suppose there is an increase in demand for that particular product. Now again, you have to buy the machineries to fulfill those demand. उस समय labor जो owners होते factory के, they try to cut down on their variable factors in order to meet the demand of the laborers in the sense like the wage push inflation हुआ. Similarly, profit push inflation में क्या है कि the owner of the factory now says that I'm selling my product at 200, I want to earn more profit now. While selling this product at 200 मेरे को सिर्फ 20 रुपये का प्रॉफिट हो रहा था. सपोज प्रॉफिट पुश में अगर वो बोलता है कि मेरे को जब मैं प्रोडक्ट को सेल कर रहा था, when I was selling the product, I was getting only 20 rupees in my pocket and rest 181 went to the 4 factors of production. FOP पे चले जाते थे, इन्वेस्ट हो जाते. वो क्या बोलता है, अब मैं इस प्रोडक्ट का दाम बढ़ा के 180 200 से मैं इसको 250 कर दूंगा. अब इसमें 50 रुपीज़ इसका एक्स्ट्रा एड ऑन हो गया. अब क्योंकि अपना ये प्रॉफिट को मैक्सिमाइज करना चाहता है, यानी कि ये 20 से इसको कितना लेके जाना चाहता है, 70 लेके जाना चाहता है, 50 रुपये और एक्स्ट्रा जोड़ के. अब इसमें भी क्या हो गया, दोबारा इसको ये पता है कि अगर ये अपना अचानक से डिमांड बढ़ा दे, प्राइस बढ़ा देगा अपने प्रोडक्ट का, व्हाट विल हैपन, द लॉ ऑफ डिमांड वुड कम इनटू प्ले. दैट इज as the law of demand which states about as the price of a commodity goes up, the demand for it falls down. So he is very versed with the fact that if he increases the price of this commodity, its demand would go down. So in order to curb this kind of situation, what he would rather do is he would again cut down on his variable cost to maximize his profit. Same goes for the raw material. अभी raw material का दाम बढ़ गया तो overall product का भी दाम बढ़ेगा. अब product का दाम बढ़ेगा तो what will happen is तो प्रोडक्ट का दाम बढ़ेगा तो ओवरऑल व्हाट विल हैपन इज he again knows that the law of demand, that if the price of the commodity increases, the demand would fall down. So what will happen, he will again try to cut down on the variable factor. And you very well know what is the variable factor here. Variable factor कौन सा है 4 factors of production में, that is your labor. I hope this is clear now. तो आपको डिमांड पुल इन्फ्लेशन में क्या होता है, बिकॉज देयर इज एग्रीगेट डिमांड राइज एज कम्पेयर टू एग्रीगेट सप्लाई, इसमें क्या होता है, एम्प्लॉयमेंट लेवल बढ़ जाता है. बट जब हम लोग कॉस्ट पुश इन्फ्लेशन की बात करते हैं, इसमें क्या होता है, एग्रीगेट सप्लाई ज़्यादा होता है एज कम्पेयर टू एग्रीगेट डिमांड. एंड नाउ इन दिस सिचुएशन द प्रोड्यूसर ऑलवेज ट्राइज टू कर्ब डाउन ऑन हिज वेरिएबल फैक्टर, और या वेरिएबल फैक्टर को कर्ब करने की कोशिश करता है. एंड एज अ रिजल्ट व्हाट विल हैपन इज ही विल डिक्रीज द नंबर ऑफ एम्प्लॉयमेंट इन हिज factory. So this is basically, it's a negative concept, cost push, because it leads to higher unemployment levels in the city. And last but not the least, structural bottlenecks. तो structural bottlenecks को सिंपल समझाने के बताने जाऊँ तो मैं, सपोज आपकी एक फैक्ट्री है दिल्ली के अंदर, यहाँ से आप मिल्क प्रोड्यूस करते हो, एंड ये मिल्क जाता है यूपी, ये मिल्क जाता है पंजाब, ये मिल्क जाता है हरियाणा, सब जगह जाता है, ये मिल्क जाता है उत्तराखंड, सब जगह जाता है. नाउ आप एक बात बताइए, इस मिल्क को यहाँ से उत्तराखंड भेजना ज़्यादा एक्सपेंसिव होगा या यहाँ से नागालैंड भेजना आसान ज़्यादा होगा? ऑब्वियसली यहाँ से आपका जो मिल्क जो दिल्ली के अंदर प्रोड्यूस हुआ है उसको पंजाब भेजना ज़्यादा कम एक्सपेंसिव होगा, ज़्यादा चीप होगा एज़ कम्पेयर टू नागालैंड. क्यों? द फर्स्ट फैक्टर इज डिस्टेंस. ऑब्वियसली आपका दिल्ली टू नागालैंड का डिस्टेंस ग्रेटर है एज़ कम्पेयर टू नागालैंड डिस्टेंस ग्रेटर एज़ कम्पेयर टू पंजाब. फर्स्ट रीज़न. सेकेंड रीज़न क्या है? टेरेन. और अलॉन्ग विद दैट अदर फैक्टर्स लाइक अदर फैक्टर जैसे कि आपका सप्लाई चेन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. अब क्योंकि आप लोग दिल्ली में बैठे हो तो यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, INFRASTRUCTURE स्ट्रक्चर. थोड़ा सा ये लिखने का थोड़ा सा सही नहीं हुआ एक्चुअली, बट टेरेन एंड फैक्टर्स, अदर फैक्टर्स लाइक सप्लाई चेन स्ट्रक्चर्स इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. तो सप्लाई चेन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर क्या होता है? सपोज आपको सब्जी दूध को यहाँ से पंजाब भेजा, तो ऑब्वियसली आप उसको एक ऐसे सामान में स्टोर करके भेजोगे जिसमें वो कूल रहे. आपको पता है दूध गर्म होगा तो क्या होगा, ख़राब हो जाएगा. तो उसको आपको प्रॉपर आइस बैग्स या फिर जो कोल्ड स्टोरेज होता है उसमें आपको भेजना पड़ेगा. अब अगर कोहिमा में, नागालैंड में अगर ये जाता है एंड वहाँ पे ये कोल्ड स्टोरेज की फैसिलिटी नहीं हो, तो व्हाट विल हैपन टू द मिल्क विच इज़ बीइंग प्रोड्यूस्ड देयर? इट विल गेट स्पॉइल्ड. फर्स्ट थिंग, खराब हो जाएगा. सेकेंड, यू नो द डिस्टेंस इज मोर. सो अगर सपोज दिल्ली टू उत्तराखंड का डिस्टेंस 200 किलोमीटर्स है, दिल्ली टू नागालैंड इज अराउंड 2000 किलोमीटर, तो ऑब्वियसली द कॉस्ट ऑफ ट्रांसपोर्टेशन वुड इंक्रीज. अलॉन्ग विद दैट द टेरेन. तो आपको रास्ता पता है, पहाड़ पे उठने का बहुत डिफिकल्ट है. नागालैंड हैज द कैपिटल ऑफ नागालैंड दैट इज कोहिमा, इट इज सिचुएटेड ऑन अ हिल. तो ऑब्वियसली आपको पहाड़ के थ्रू जाना पड़ता है, तो आपका कॉस्ट ऑफ ट्रैवलिंग भी इंक्रीज हो जाता है. तो दिस इज अनदर रीजन वाई स्ट्रक्चरल बॉटलनेक्स, इन द सेंस कि आपके पास प्रॉपर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर नहीं है या ट्रांसपोर्ट फैसिलिटीज़ नहीं है, इन द सेंस कि आपके रोड खराब है या रोड्स है ही नहीं. तो व्हाट हैपेंस इज द प्राइस ऑफ प्रोडक्ट ऑटोमेटिकली गोज अप. सो दिस आर द 3 रीजन्स व्हाट दैट लीड्स टू इन्फ्लेशन इन द इकोनॉमी. सो मैंने आपको डिमांड पुल बता दिया, व्हेन देयर इज एग्रीगेट डिमांड ग्रेटर देन एग्रीगेट सप्लाई. कॉस्ट पुश में एग्रीगेट सप्लाई इज ग्रेटर देन एग्रीगेट डिमांड. एंड इसमें तो क्या होता है, आपका सप्लाई चेन या इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ही प्रॉपर अवेलेबल नहीं है, तो उससे क्या होता है, ऑटोमेटिकली द प्राइस ऑफ कमोडिटीज़ गो अप. तो ऑब्वियसली आज के दिन में जो दूध या जो फ्रूट्स असम दिल्ली में सेल हो रहे हैं, जो हरियाणा में प्रोड्यूस होते हैं, सेम फ्रूट्स अगर हम लोग नागालैंड या फिर असम या फिर कोई भी नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न स्टेट या साउथ में केरला में भेजें, ऑब्वियसली उनका डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल करेगा तो उनका क्या हो जाएगा, प्राइस बढ़ जाएगा। एंड प्राइस बढ़ गया तो क्या हो गया, आपकी परचेजिंग पावर कम हो गई। एंड व्हेन योर परचेजिंग पावर डिक्रीज, व्हाट विल हैपन इज, व्हेन योर परचेजिंग पावर डिक्रीज, व्हाट विल हैपन इज, इट लीड्स टू इन्फ्लेशन। सो आई होप दिस इज क्लियर नाउ। सो 3 टाइप्स ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन, थोड़ा सा ये बड़ा था एक्सप्लेन करने के लिए। So now we are done with this part, what is inflation. Now we move on to our next section, that is your what is contractionary and expansionary monetary policy, measures to tackle inflation, sorry. So there are 2 measures that are there to tackle inflation. First taken by the government, basic difference hai, and another taken by the RBI. Our main focus when we study monetary policy would be on RBI. So when RBI takes up steps to curb the inflationary situation, we call it as monetary policy, and when the same steps are taken by the government, we call it as fiscal policy. मीनिंग यहाँ पे मैंने देख रखा है, कंट्रोल स्पेंडिंग, रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट। सो गवर्नमेंट का सिर्फ इन्फ्लेशन कंट्रोल करने का काम नहीं होता, उसका वेलफेयर इंश्योर करने का भी काम होता है। तो वेलफेयर इंश्योर भी गवर्नमेंट देखती है, इसलिए इट्स नॉट ऑलवेज फोकस्ड ऑन इन्फ्लेशन। बट आरबीआई व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द रिजर्व बैंक, इट्स ओनली फोकस इज टू कंट्रोल द मनी सप्लाई, which would lead to control in or decrease in inflation. Now यहाँ पे जो मैंने दूसरा पॉइंट दे रखा आपके सहूलियत के लिए, आपको समझने के लिए, तो कंट्रोल स्पेंडिंग एंड रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, ये चीज़ आपका आ गया गवर्नमेंट के द्वारा फिजिकल पॉलिसी एंड आरबीआई के द्वारा मॉनेटरी। कंट्रोल कौन करता है फिजिकल पॉलिसी को, गवर्नमेंट, दैट इज मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस, एंड मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी को आरबीआई, जैसे मैंने आपको यहाँ भी दिखा रखा है। फोकस किस पे रहता है, ग्रोथ के साथ साथ डेवलपमेंट ऑफ द इकोनॉमी पे भी रहता है, कि आपको ग्रोथ भी करनी है, ग्रोथ इन द सेंस इन्फ्लेशन कंट्रोल करके रखना है, रिसेशन में नहीं पड़ने देना, डिमांड इंक्लूड मेंटेन करके रखनी है, अलॉन्ग विद दैट डेवलपमेंट भी करना है सोसाइटी का। इसका आरबीआई का क्या फोकस रहता है, पहली तो प्राइस स्टेबिलिटी बनी रही, यानी कि प्राइस जो है वो ज़्यादा फ्लक्चुएट ना करे, ज़्यादा बढ़े कमी नहीं। अलॉन्ग विद दैट इन्फ्लेशन कंट्रोल हो, जो इंक्रीज इन प्राइस हो जाता है ना, उसको भी कंट्रोल करने की बात करता है आपका मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी। नेक्स्ट व्हेन यू कम डाउन टू टूल्स, तो आरबीआई के पास 2 टूल्स मौजूद है इन्फ्लेशन को कंट्रोल करने के लिए। एंड व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट गवर्नमेंट के पास 2 टूल्स हैं टू एट द डिस्पोजल टू कंट्रोल द inflationary situation, that is, first is taxation and another one is government spending, and these two are only nothing but the part of the budgeting system. So when we study the fiscal policy, our first focus would be on studying the budget of our country. So when we study the chapter tomorrow, I'll show you about this also, what is this budget, what are its different stages, how it is presented likewise. Next, when we talk about RBI, the tools available with RBI or tools at their disposal to control inflationary situation in economy are रेपोज हो गया, रिवर्स रेपो हो गया, LRR हो गया, लिक्विड रिजर्व रेशियो हो गया, जिसमें CRR कैश रिजर्व रेशियो आता है, स्टैट्यूटरी लिक्विड रेशियो आता है, एंड रेपो हो गया, ओपन मार्केट ऑपरेशन हो गया, रिवर्स रेपोज एंड रेपो। सो आई एक्सप्लेन यू ऑल दी स्टेप्स एंड कैसे इसको यूज़ करके मनी सप्लाई को कर्ब किया जाता है आरबीआई के द्वारा। सो आवर मेन फोकस वुड बी ऑन मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी, दैट टाइम वी विल स्टडी इट। नेक्स्ट, एज यू मूव डाउन, अफेक्ट्स ऑफ मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी एंड फिजिकल पॉलिसी के बारे में बता रखा है। तो किसको अफेक्ट करती है आपकी फिजिकल पॉलिसी, इट इफेक्ट्स द बजट, या तो सरप्लस होगा बजट का, या बजट डेफिसिट। सरप्लस मतलब इफ बजट एक्सपेंडिचर, आपके घर में एक्सपेंडिचर ज़्यादा है एज कम्पेयर टू योर रिसिप्ट्स या रेवेन्यू, वी कॉल इट एज डेफिसिट। व्हेन देयर इज मोर रेवेन्यू एज कम्पेयर टू योर एक्सपेंडिचर, वी कॉल इट एज सरप्लस सिचुएशन, आपके पास ज़्यादा बच गया। एंड व्हेन द रेवेन्यू इज इक्वल टू एक्सपेंडिचर, वी कॉल इट एज अ न्यूट्रल सिचुएशन। ये तो बेसिक चीज़ ही है। नाउ इफेक्ट्स किसके ऊपर करता है, मैंने बता दिया, बजट सरप्लस डेफिसिट पे ऊपर, और आपका ये मॉनिटरी ये किस पे करता है, कॉस्ट ऑफ बोरिंग एंड मोर्टगेजेस के ऊपर। सो आई होप दिस इज क्लियर नाउ, वी मूव अहेड फ्रॉम हियर। So these are the 2 types of policy available at the disposal of RBI and government to tackle inflation. Last but not the least for today's topic, that are types of monetary policy. So there are 2 types of monetary policy to be precise. The first is your expansionary monetary policy. Expansionary as in increase करना है मनी सप्लाई को। increase क्यों करना है, क्योंकि सिचुएशन इकोनॉमी में रिसेशन आया हुआ है। रिसेशन क्यों आया हुआ है, लोगों की डिमांड बहुत कम है। क्यों लोगों की डिमांड कम है, बिकॉज लोगों के पास मनी सप्लाई नहीं है, उनके हाथ में पैसा ही नहीं है, लिक्विड करेंसी बहुत कम है। एंड लिक्विड करेंसी को क्या बढ़ाने के लिए क्या करना पड़ेगा, आपको लॉजिकल सी बात है, आपको लोन्स सस्ते में बांटने पड़ेंगे। लोन्स जब आप सस्ते में बांटोगे, ईजी चीप लोन्स जब आप चीप बांटोगे, तो व्हाट विल हैपन, मोर एंड मोर पीपल डिमांड करेंगे, मोर एंड मोर पीपल डिमांड करना स्टार्ट करेंगे लोन। चीप लोन्स आप कैसे बांटोगे? इंटरेस्ट रेट कम करके, ऑब्वियसली उनके ऊपर जो इंटरेस्ट रेट लगता है उसको कम करके, एंड जैसे ही आप ये काम करोगे तो क्या होगा, मोर एंड मोर पीपल विल बी विलिंग टू टेक मोर लोन्स, एंड एज अ रिजल्ट व्हाट विल हैपन, मनी सप्लाई वुड इंक्रीज इन द इकोनॉमी, एंड अगेन इट विल बी एन इक्विलिब्रियम पोजीशन. सो उस टाइप की रिसेशन को कंट्रोल करने के लिए वी यूजेस एक्सपेंशनरी मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी, एंड कॉन्ट्रैक्शनरी जस्ट द ऑपोजिट. सो आई हैव गिवन यू द एग्जांपल, मैंने आपको एक्सप्लेन भी कर रखा है ये कैसे काम करता है, तो ये फटाफट मैं आपको आई विल जस्ट शो इट टू यू हाउ इट वर्क्स. सो टाइप्स ऑफ मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी when I'm talking about expansionary and contractionary. So expansionary monetary policy leads to increase in money supply. Why it is, what its targets basically the recessionary situation. जब recession आता है, COVID-19 के टाइम में हमारी इकोनॉमी में recession था, क्यों? Because demand fell drastically. Why the demand fell drastically? Because everything was closed, nobody was buying anything, and as a result companies were not doing business, and when business was not happening, the recession came up. Now it targets recession, and what is the process to tackle this? Now the solution is basically, पहले आपको सोल्यूशन लिखना पड़ेगा. सोल्यूशन क्या है आपको रिसेशन को टैकल करने का? इज बेसिकली टू इंक्रीज मनी सप्लाई इन द इकोनॉमी. तो ये मनी सप्लाई कैसे इंक्रीज होगा? आई हैव गिवन यू द प्रोसेस हियर. सो यू डिक्रीज द इंटरेस्ट रेट. इफ यू डिक्रीज द इंटरेस्ट रेट ऑन लोन्स, what will happen? Loans will become cheaper, and once they become cheaper, what will happen? People will take more and more loans, and when they have more loans, what will happen? Money supply would increase, and when money supply would increase, what will happen? Demand for goods will also increase. Demand increases, and as a result, what will happen? Price of this good was also increase, and when the prices increase, it would come to an equilibrium level. Same goes for your contractionary policy. When there is high inflation in the economy, we control this kind of situation. तो मैंने आपको बताया था इन्फ्लेशन में क्या होता है. इन्फ्लेशन की जो when we studied the first part of this chapter, we saw that inflation is nothing but your increase in price level and P level and fall in purchasing power. So इसी को ही हम लोग इन्फ्लेशन बोलते हैं. As a result, to control this type of situation, we use contractionary policy. Why? When we use contractionary policy, we try to decrease the money supply, and when the money supply decreases, automatically inflation in the economy comes down. And how we can do that? We can do that by increasing the interest rate on loans. That means loans becomes more expensive. Now less people are willing to take loans. When loans are expensive, less people. तो यहाँ पे मैंने आपको बता भी रखा है, loans expensive, less people willing to take loans. When less people willing to take loan, what will happen in the economy? Money supply would decrease, and when the money supply would decrease, demand would also decrease, and once the demand decreases of a product, what will happen? The prices will automatically fall down. This is nothing but your contractionary monetary policy. So I hope this is clear. I have explained you both the parts. In the next session tomorrow, we will see what are the different tools available with the RBI that I have already told you about, like the repos, reverse repo, LRR, that includes CRR and SLR, and what is OMO, what is marginal standing facility, and what is liquid adjustment facility. I'll tell you all these things in tomorrow's class, because these are the tools and you need a better understanding of that. So till then, take care, have a nice day, and study hard because your exams are just coming. So all the very best, and I'll see you tomorrow.